Hi, my name is Oksana, founder of LoveSense, and today I have a quick question for you. Imagine if you had your whole life to live all over again. Would you do more than you've done so far? Where would you be? Who would you be with? Well, now, if your life does not look the way you want it, ask yourself why. We all have times like this when we feel stuck, disappointed, start doubting ourselves and our actions. But this is normal part of life. Some people use it as lessons and move on. Some change whatever needs to be changed. But there are some of us that needs that extra support and tools to move forward. Either way, it's always a great idea to sit down for that much elusive self-analysis and soul-searching. Knowing what you want to become tomorrow is the only way you can start working on it now. Today, I would like to share with you an interview that I recently did with Michael Bernoff. He is unlike any individual you'll ever meet. As a master practitioner of Neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, and a creator of human interactive technology, or H.I.T, Mike has worked with thousands of people, assisting in recovering from trauma, self-limiting beliefs, fears, phobias, and others. Many have called Michael a miracle worker. Michael has this unique ability to not only cut through the clutter and obstacles that keep most people stuck in a rut, but he does this in this warm, energizing, and entirely honest way that inspires his audience to take action. He's dedicated to being a lifelong student and a teacher of communication and rapid personal transformation. Feel free to share this information with your friends and family, and let me know how you like this interview in the comment section below. Enjoy. All right. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. I've been thinking about this all day, and I'm so excited to get a chance to chat.
Fantastic. So, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into this whole area of helping people?
You know, it's a long story, but I'll give you the quickest version possible. I like so many people, had this desire since I was a child to do so much more with my life. I truly believe that inside all of us, since I was a kid, that I had this desire to have more. And, you know, one day I realized that no one out there was teaching me how to have more, and pretty much everyone around me was doing the same thing. I grew up in New Jersey, a small town, middle class, and one of the most unique things is I grew up in a very, very complacent environment. So here's me wanting more, and no one around me can help me get more. And I started buying into, after getting 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, that, you know, being successful wasn't for someone like me. And luckily enough, I wound up, getting out of the environment that I was in, and I, went away to Arizona, went away to college, and I had met some people. I got a unique job. I was valeting cars, and I was parking all these, fancy cars one day. And I always asked the question, like, how do these people have these things? And I couldn't figure out how they did it. And I remember the exact moment, one of the other valets said, "Why don't you ask them?" And in that very moment, I asked the guy that had an Aston Martin. I just parked a $200,000 car. I said, "How did you get this?" And luckily enough, he pulled me aside and said, "Would you like me to show you how?" And in that very moment, not only did I meet one of my first mentors and someone that started me down the path of being successful, I realized something very interesting that day, that if someone has something, if you ask them, or they're willing to show you, or there's a way that they did it, and anybody has the ability to change. So I went from a very complacent mindset to somebody that day that really has been on this absolute quest to learn how to get what it is that I want out of my life, whether it's economic, relationship-wise, health-wise, that there's somebody that can teach me. There's a way of doing it that's better, and all we have to do is find a person to ask. So went from complacent thinking to really, how do you make it happen? And I've been obsessed since that day of teaching other people, because I swear I thought I was absent that day at school when I taught success, because I don't know anybody that's teaching it out there in the regular education system.
Exactly. So why do you think a lot of people are actually afraid of change, or afraid to take that first step?
Well, like me, I think the biggest reason people feel that they're scared, they have fear. Fear, I always say, stands for forget everything and run. That they walk away from doing what it is they want to do. I think change is fearful for people. It's like a quote I heard from Batman Begins: is we fear what we don't understand. And I think most people think change means you got to give up who you are completely,
Yeah.
You got to stop doing this. And it goes against the grain for most people, because change really does mean you're going to have to change. Change requires you'll have to do things different. You don't have to give up every aspect of you, but you're going to have to take on some new ways of thinking, some new ideas, some new technology, new stuff. And I really think the biggest reason people fear it is they don't understand it. And once you realize change is just the slightest shift, it starts to become possible for people. It's not a 360 directional turn that brings you back where you are. It may be 180 degrees, and that 180 degrees may take 2 seconds a day, a minute a day, a little bit here and there. It's a life-changing experience that can happen very slightly for you.
Exactly.
If that answers your question.
It does. But I feel like a lot of people, grow up with this this imprint of others people's perspective and idea, and they it gets planted in your brain, and you accept it as the language that you speak, right? So how do you kind of recognize these patterns? Like, what is the power of actually subconscious mind?
Well, I had no idea how powerful the unconscious mind is. I didn't realize my first hypnotist I ever ran across was my parents. I swear they were hypnotizing me my whole life to tell me things like, that's not for people like us. Because I'd see people that had great things, and they said, well, that's how they live. And I always thought, that's them. And as I've been reading recently a lot, I am obsessed with the idea of learning and language, because I truly believe that when you learn how to learn and you learn how language works in your society and your world, you're going to get the most out of it. I've been reading a book recently called The Elusive Obvious by Moshe Feldenkrais, and it's an amazing book. And in that book, he explains that the average person, when you're born, my first 2 years of your life, like I'm watching my little Maya right now, she's going to be 1 here soon, and she's always learning how to use her hands, what hurts, what doesn't hurt, what feels good, what food she likes. I mean, this face means, I don't like it at all. And spend, 1 year, 2 years, like up to about 7 years of your life working on personal development, working on conscious, like what is about you, how you operate most effectively. And something happens about 8 or 9 years old where, whether it's your parents, school, society, they grab a hold of you, and you go from having life being a personal learning experience of personal education, understanding you, to learning about society, about the language of your area, what you're supposed to say, where you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to work. And it's not that any of this is negative. It's by about 8 years old we stop developing ourselves. And the unconscious mind stops truly developing about 8 years old, and it only accepts what it is you've learned up till then. And once you learn how to understand the unconscious mind, you realize that it works perfectly. It totally wants to give you whatever it is you want in your life, but most people miss it. I'll give you a prime example of this. If you were to understand there's a mind-body connection, it's very simple. When something isn't the way you want it to be, your mind sends you a signal. For instance, you look at your bank account. Money's an easy one to keep score on. You look at your bank account and you give that look like, ugh, like my baby gives, like, ugh. My baby, when she goes, ugh, doesn't need it anymore. But when a lot of us look at our bank account, it's not what you want it. Like, there's not enough zeros. It practically is a zero. What most people do is they feel guilty, shameful, they go back to bed. A successful person that understands how their mind works says, wow, my bank account isn't where I want it to be. It's time to get to work, time to improve the resume, get a new job, make more sales calls, do what I need to do. Or like if you look in the mirror, unconsciously, we misdirect message. And the reason we misdirect it is, especially women are great at this. They realize they're 5 pounds overweight, so they go in the closet and get a bigger outfit. And they get a bigger outfit and they say, well, no, I guess I ate too much. Well, when you gain 5 pounds, that feeling you feel of guilt or feeling bad means get your butt to the gym. It means learn your unconscious programs because they're really huge to use. So when you learn how your unconscious mind works versus your conscious mind, the misdirection of what's going on and really understanding that is enormous. So that's the one thing I want to tell you. Most people are working against themselves instead of with themselves.
Exactly. You got to utilize that just as a tool, as a reminder, take it that negative into a positive. And that brings me to a different question. So, we're told, okay, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And when you hear it long enough and often enough, you accept that as truth again, right? So you get into the point in your life where you're like, okay, so someone told me if I go to school, get good grades, go to college, blah, 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 I get a good job and all this. And all of a sudden, you're at the point, you're like, well, why is this not working? And what happens is a lot of people, what happened to me too, you start feeling like, oh my God, I have failed. There has been something that I didn't do, I didn't listen, whatever it was, that's it, I'm a failure. How do you transition from that idea of being a failure into, okay, you know what, why won't I just take this, look at this, use it as a lesson, and move on? Is there certain tools maybe that we can, or language that we can use, or certain exercises that we can do?
Yeah, and that's huge you bring that up because most people are looking to solve their challenges logically. Like logically, if a girlfriend of yours comes to you and says, "Hey, my husband's awful, my boyfriend's awful," you'd say, "Well, leave," right?
Yeah.
Logically says, he's beating you, leave. And logically says that, but emotionally is really what changed their lives. It's the emotions that move us, never the logic. I mean, logically, an alcoholic should not go to a bar. But emotionally, the alcoholic's connected to the bar. So the biggest challenge is most people are looking to change their lives logically when it's emotions that really change our lives. So one of the greatest things you have to do is learn how to use language effectively and create triggers for you that make sense. So I realized a long time ago that our beliefs control our life, and most people, by all means, it didn't work out. One of the greatest failures we have in our lives is when I talked about middle class before, I talked about complacency. And complacency, I believe, is one of the biggest failures we have as humans. And the biggest reason why complacency is such a failure for most people is because you don't see it coming. It's not there. Like when you foreclose on your house, it's obvious. There's a sign outside your house. When you get divorced, it's obvious. The relationship didn't work. When you're bankrupt, and you lose everything, people know. But when you're complacent, people never know. So one of the greatest ways to break the complacency of failure is a very, very simple thing. And I'm going to share this with you. One of the beliefs that I was taught by one of my mentors early on is that there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. And if something doesn't work, it's a reminder it's time to do something else. Remember, there's no failure, there's only feedback. Your extra 10 pounds in your body is not failure. It's saying get your butt to the gym. Yeah. It's learning how to redirect your mind. So successful people take something that seems like an atrocity to anyone else on earth, and they use it to their advantage of how to redirect, how to change, how to do something different. So a lot of people think, a fight in the relationship is the end of the world. Really what it means is, wait a second, what I just said right there didn't go over well. So odds are I shouldn't say that again. Or maybe there's a way I can say it better and say it differently. So if I can give any advice to anybody out there is that if you do want to succeed, start learning how your mind works. Start changing the emotional connection to make it mean something different, because there is no failure. There's only feedback in life. And if you take the feedback and use it to your advantage, you can make anything happen for you.
I love that. Not a failure, just the feedback. You know what also happens when you just said it and you're like, you know what, it takes away that power that we attach to the word failure. It doesn't seem that bad anymore. You're like, you know what, it's just the feedback. I just got to take a different approach. Like, what a concept. It's so easy. I love it.
It's the simplest thing in the world. And really, it all comes down to your perceptions. I mean, the reason why most people fail in life, and I won't get off topic for too long here, but here's why people fail. It's very simple. Perceptions are off, because we've all gotten started and stopped. We start, stop, because you could change your actions, but if your perceptions don't change, you never change. So you get yourself to stop doing something, and that's great. You changed your actions. But if you still see yourself as a person that makes those mistakes or eats that cake or doesn't make a lot of money, you don't change. So we all have to work on, I'm sure you'll talk to me about that later, but your perceptions really create your reality. And don't need positive self-talk. I mean, literally, people that make millions of dollars see themselves as people that make millions of dollars. And people that don't see themselves that way.
So
is that true?
Yeah, for sure. So do you think self-confidence has to do anything with that? To being able to, to transform those negative ideas into positive? Because a lot of people, it seems like, it sounds very easy. But when you start digging, it actually brings out more negative stuff. And you're like, well, you know what? They don't understand me. Like, I have so much other stuff. Like, there's this baggage that we carry with ourselves without, giving ourselves permission to let go of that baggage. Is there any suggestions?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the biggest challenge is, when there's something isn't working out in your life, it always is a confidence thing. I always say the reason I'm not in better shape, it's a confidence thing. I mean, I'm in great shape, but it's an extraordinary level, requires another level of confidence. So what I really want to position with you and anybody listening to this right now, that if you want to grow, it requires more confidence. Here's the challenge. Having more confidence, sometimes you have to look at yourself and see where you're at. Now, one of the things to not dig up the problems is to recognize that whenever you look at yourself, what you've done up till now is based on what you've known up till now. So one of the greatest beliefs that I've learned years ago, and I know I've covered this with you in one of my H.I.T courses, is a very simple concept that anybody can use, is that people work the best with what they've got, And another really cool tool that I've realized for years is that everything we've done in your life has a positive intention. There's a reason you do it. For instance, if you procrastinate, there's a reason. Now, you may be using your procrastination in the wrong place. Like, for instance, you procrastinate at work and it costs you your job. Now, procrastination is also good, but you're overweight. So take your procrastination you used to use at work and use it to procrastinate overeating. So at night, you put off overeating, you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you put off the overeating. So everything can be used in the right place. So instead of beating yourself up and giving yourself a hard time, the best way to look at it is everything you have in your life has a positive intention when used in the right vein.
Exactly. So that also brings me up, okay, we talk about ourselves. Let's talk about relationships. So when we talk to other people, right, and we reach this point of this complete tension, you're like, there's just no other way that I'm gonna convince him in this or her or the other way around. And I heard you saying the phrase, there's no complicated people, you just don't have the right tools to talk to them. So when you reach this conflict, is there certain maybe tools, I know you teach a lot about it, how to maybe put yourself in another person's shoes in order to understand them and maybe avoid actual conflict that can create more problems in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing out there, no matter how many times I teach this and share this with people, is it's really challenging when you're in the middle of a fight to stop and say, wait, let me see it from your perspective. Because when you're in it, you're in it. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is after you just did it and you're in it, you yelled and you screamed, because we're going to do that. We're human. We're emotional creatures. I mean, we got our opinion. They got theirs. I mean, you always got to remember, when there's people arguing, there's always two fools involved. You're a fool and I'm a fool because we're foolish because we're arguing. And really what we want to do is get back to love, and we want to get back to a great relationship. So one of the things that I've realized is there's different perspectives for people. And the reason therapy is sought after for so many people, and I'm not an advocate of therapy for most therapists, because most therapists want to talk about your problems and tell me what happened. I'm an advocate of where are you at and how do you get to where you want to go. So if you want to talk about why this works so well, is having a third-party perspective of anything is a better way of looking at it. So you always got to remember, like a piece of bread, there's always two sides. There's also two sides to every story. So one of the greatest things that I've realized is if you can figure out, when you're talking with somebody, where are they currently at right now? Before you even open up your mouth, what state of mind are they in? Are they angry? Are they upset? Are they bothered? If they are, don't start your story while they're angry and bothered, because you're going to attach love and happiness to angry and bothered. So the first thing to figure out is, what state of mind are they in? Take a second, be aware, and they got their arms crossed like this. Let's get them from this to maybe
relaxed. Yeah.
Get a little more relaxed so you can open up your mind. And one of the greatest ways to do that is to see things through one of two perspectives. And what that is see it from their shoes for at least a second. You got to remember, you don't have to agree with anybody. You don't have to agree with their perspective. You might be in a fight. The biggest reason why you're in a fight is you don't agree. Yeah. So you don't have to agree with somebody. You don't have to accept them either, what they're saying. All I ask is that you understand. Understand their point of view based on their perspective. So you don't have to accept it, and you don't have to accept it as your own way of thinking. All you have to do is accept that it's their way of thinking, acknowledge it. Acknowledge that it's real to them. Now, by doing that, you then step outside of your own perspective and you see it from a third perspective, because there's really two things happening at once. There's your emotions and their emotions. So if you just imagine in your mind, you were floating across the room and you're an imaginary person watching two people fight, you would do things differently. You'd be moving people, say, hey, say this, hey, say that. An intelligent person is aware of both things going on. Their emotions, your emotions, and acknowledging that you understand their perspective, because there's a reason they're angry. And the biggest reason they're angry is your reaction to them. It's not just everything that they're saying. It's not even what you're doing. It's how you react, because feelings are real for people. And if you tell me you're in pain, I can say, come on, you're not in pain. It's ridiculous. You're in pain. You just told me you were. So I just have to say, I have to acknowledge that you're in pain. I have to acknowledge what's going on. And the second I acknowledge it, this turns into maybe even this. But this is way worse than this. And we get an opportunity to actually have a conversation. So seeing things through a third-party perspective is the greatest gift you can give any relationship, whether it's work, personal, intimate. It's not easy, but it's beyond worth it.
Well, like anything, everything takes practice, right? But I think what you just...
Right away. You will not get this right away, like anything.
Another amazing thing that you just said, it's kind of like it's allowing the other person to have that space that you would like to have,
Yep.
right? So it's kind of, well, if I want this, I'm sure they want this too. So imagine
Yep.
if two parties realize that, all your quarrels, all your fights kind of might not be eliminated, but at least they'll probably will be much shorter than usually.
Yeah, shrinking fights is great. I mean, everybody should be, their goal should be like, hey, we used to do 50 minutes fights. Let's, get the time down. Let's get this thing down to 5 minutes.
Let's start the timer.
Yeah, and it's part of emotions. You got to get it out, because when you bottle that stuff up, you don't get a good quality life.
Exactly. So can you share maybe some success stories? I know you work with thousands and thousands of people. How the tools, like how fast have you seen the change happen?
Well, give me an example. What type of relationship? Because I got a gazillion stories, and I want to make sure we fill the right one. Like, give me any type of thing, whether it's health, relationships, success, money. I mean, you tell me what it is, and I've got all kinds of things I can share with you. Cool stuff that'll motivate everyone here listening.
So let's say someone. Let's have two scenarios. Let's say you have a woman that has been had plenty of successful relationships, romantic relationships, for example. But for whatever reason, they always end the same way. They always end the same
person with a different social security number and a different face, but they're the same person with the same problems.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So they always end up the same spot over and over. They start over. They think they do stuff differently. At the end, it still kind of ends the same. So at a certain point of life, when they tried everything, they try your approach.
Well, my approach is real simple, and I call it the technology of success for a reason. No matter whatever it is you want to succeed on in life, it's three very simple things. One is you need to decide that where you're at is where you don't want to be anymore. So I always tell people, the second you decide you're going to work with me, we got to change quickly, because I'm like a bloodhound. I hear you say you want to change, and I don't hear anything else. I go, and I make you get it. So it's one of those things that I have a 100% success rate getting people that really want to change, because once you decide, game on. So the first thing I realized to get people to change is you got to decide that you want to change, that where you're at isn't where you want to be. Second thing, we got to get you to change your actions. Like, now, if you keep on meeting the same person over again, we got to get you to meet another person. But the biggest reason why, like a woman, let's say she's in an abusive relationship, or emotionally abusive, or just a guy that doesn't care, abuses her, like just even like uses whatever it is, and the most amazing thing that I've realized about this is they typically will find the polar opposite of that guy and go for them for about 6 weeks. Guy totally falls in love with the girl. She feels uncomfortable because this is weird. He really likes me, and goes back to the old boyfriend again, or the old situation, or another version of the old one. And the biggest reason why is the third thing is she didn't change her perceptions. So one of the areas that I work on with people very quickly is changing their perceptions of what things mean to them by getting people to understand why they operate from those patterns and programs. Not from a psychological standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. Letting them realize what they were looking to gain from that. Because a lot of times if we grow up, and my parents fought all the time. My parents, but that's just what they do. I'm from New Jersey. I mean, I swear everybody watches The Sopranos. We argue, we fight.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was normal in a relationship until I realized all I was doing was modeling my parents. So whenever I was in business or intimate relationships, I'd find people that argued. That seemed normal. Like confrontation seemed like love. Yet that really isn't a loving relationship. And for a lot of people, we have to go in and figure out what our perceptions are. So I've had clients before that their definition of love, their definition of what love to them was a certain situation. Like things had to be certain in the way they were. So they would go for what was uncomfortable. So I taught them how to get the same level of certainty that they were looking for in a relationship from something else in their life, so they can get love from their relationship instead of this ultimate certainty that someone had to be exactly the way they needed them to be, by changing where they got what they needed. Because we all have needs of things we need in our life. And when you shift where you get those from, you get massive change. I have all kinds of clients. Some ended up amazing where they fixed the relationships. Others realized, I've been here 20 years and 19 and a half of them have been miserable. Some of them are single and happily single. Others are, remarried again and they're in great relationships. But most importantly is before you go out there searching for what it is you want, you got to figure out who you are first.
Yeah,
and you got to figure out how you operate, because when you get you down and you're in love with yourself, I know it sounds Dr. Phil, it sounds cliche, it sounds like Deepak Chopra, like love yourself. But once you figure out how you operate, getting the love of someone else is simple.
So true. Totally agree with that. So let's talk about another scenario. Let's say you're at work hate your work completely. Just hate it. Hate it, but it pays the bills. It's comfortable. It's convenient. You kind of just waiting on, 8 to 5. Okay, I got half an hour left.
Water cooler. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Okay, freedom, done. Let me go do actually what I enjoy.
Yep.
Have you ever had that scenario, like for people to come up and kind of just trying to figure out, maybe is there something else maybe you should be doing? Like stop it, like let it go.
Well, there's two areas. One, if you're getting paid well and you got a good job and you want to be an artist, but you don't have a full schedule to be an artist, you could quit your job, get depressed, freaked out, stressed out, and become an artist.
Yeah, that would work.
I always tell people, start working on your dreams at night while you're using your job as a venture capitalist. I always tell people, use your job, and I do this all the time, because when people come to me very depressed, I always wonder one thing, like, do you have a busy schedule? Most depressed people have an empty calendar. If you're busy all day long, you have no time to be depressed. You have no time to be having a bad day. So if you hate your work and you hate your job, it's really a miscommunication with yourself. If you're making a decent enough income that it's supporting your family, yourself, what it is you really want to do, I recommend you keep that for now and reframe what that is. Instead of it being your job, it's your venture capitalist for your business, your dreams, and your hopes. I teach people this, tens of thousands of people a year, a very simple concept. Use that money, parlay into what it is that you really desire doing, and start filling your calendar to go for what it is you want. Most people have made success negotiable. Start finding ways to make what it is you want non-negotiable, which means start putting yourself in a position where you have to succeed at your business, your artwork, your job, whatever it is that you really want to be doing with your life, and start finding a way to get yourself to do that. So one of the greatest gifts that I can recommend to you right now is you have something you don't love doing. You got a totally miserable at work. You're going to have to find a passion, a hobby, or something else to do, because going home and bitching and whining, complaining that work isn't fun only makes it worse when you go back to the office. But reframing it and look and say, these people are paying me so I can do my artwork, my singing, my time with my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my aunt, my uncle, my best friend, my husband on the side. I go surfing, whatever it is I want. I just highly recommend that you find a way to reframe that in your brain, and also build an out plan for yourself that in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to find a way to limit what it is you're doing. Here's the biggest reason people are miserable. They give themselves one chance. I'm either going to do my job or my dream.
Yeah.
Here's a better way of looking at it. Anytime it's black or white, we usually go gray, like, what? We don't know what to do. So I always say, give yourself a third option. It confuses the brain. I can either do my job, I can do my dream, or I can do my job and work on my dream on the side. And if I choose in a couple of months to go back to just my dream, I can, and change things. The second you give yourself a third option, it changes everything in your life almost instantly.
It's like the fight, you go back into third shoes and look at it from the outsider perspective.
Yep.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing such an amazing tools and little tips for people. I'm sure everyone will benefit greatly. I know you have a program that is called Call to Action. Can you tell a little bit more about what it is, what people can expect when they go through it?
Yeah, I created that. I mean, it's cool because we were thinking the other day, like, when did we create it? April will be the 11th year. 11th year we've done Call to Action with a big guarantee we've had for years. And I don't know if this makes sense to people or not, but it's a 5 days, you and I working together, me kicking your butt and holding your hand for 5 days. You don't have to leave your house or over the phone. And the reason I created this was it was a necessity out there that I realized is I would go to seminars. And years ago, I was into books. I was into seminars. I could repeat everything any speaker ever said about personal development. I could tell you what page I read it on. I was so into success, but I wasn't succeeding because nobody was holding me accountable. So I created Call to Action out of a demand that was out there in the marketplace of how do you hold people accountable, get them to get their actions. And my guarantee is very, very simple. I can get you to get more done of what matters in your life in 5 days than you have in 5 months, guaranteed. And I've been promising this to people for years. And the reason why the course works so well is that you and I work together in a small group environment. I'll keep it real brief. I get real passionate about this. And you and I work together, and we do it over the phone. It's either in the morning, it's in the night, whatever's convenient to your schedule. Even if you're international, you could be in Europe or Australia, New Jersey, New York, where I'm from, or maybe in Texas. Doesn't matter where you're at. And the coolest thing about it is we're going to get you to make decisions, take action, change your perceptions, get you out of your comfort zone, do what it is you want to do in your life. And it's amazing because who you are when you start that week and who you end up by the Friday, when you look back, you recognize your face, but you don't recognize your actions you're doing, because not only do you take the actions and know how to take them, you're following through and doing what it is you want to be doing with your life. And it's really amazing what you get to do, but it's not for everybody. It's your people that really desire to change. So I always tell people, if you really are happy with where you're at, I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
But if you're really committed to changing, I'm going to make it happen for you because I'm obsessed with one thing. You tell me you want it, I'm going to get it for you. So I believe that sums up a lot of it. I mean, I can get into I'm sure I get a website or something I can explain it a little more, but that's the best way I can explain it in 60 seconds or less.
Yeah.
You and me, small group, work together, kick your butt, hold your hand, get what it is you want, and it's going to be like a chiropractor for your brain and your life. We're going to get you in line, doing what matters. And if you're doing a lot right now, and you're making a lot happen right now, that's great. Let's you doing what you really want to be doing and making it happen. Relationships, health, business, success. I got success stories littering my Facebook page, and I'd love you to be one of the next ones.
Well, sounds amazing, and I actually had a pleasure to take your call to action course, and man, it worked. I tell you, it worked. Now you actually, when you notice yourself for 10 minutes that, oh my God, I think I'm entering my procrastination zone, the red flag goes off, and you're just like, okay, quickly, recognize, go do something. I love it. I love it. Definitely changed my life. So thank you so much for sharing all this amazing information. We will include a link below this video to find out more and how you can get that opportunity to work with Mike directly. So thank you so much, and I will speak with you soon. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And I'm just, I want to make sure, just use one thing that I taught you here today. Just go do something with it. And that makes the difference. Oksana, I so appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.